Hello and welcome to The Closing Track, the official podcast of Another Ascending Lark, where music and the Christian worldview collides, and the helicopter exploded in the background, and Hugh Jackman walked away looking awesome despite the fakeness of the scene.
What was fake about it?
Everything.
Explain.
There's a perfect trail of some lightable substance, like in a perfectly straight line, after this helicopter crashes, after Wolverine slices it out of the sky, and it lights up and explodes in the most perfect, organized, clean fashion possible.
Okay, one. There's clearly a small trench where the gas flowed into, so it is believable, I think, for that to happen. Secondly, you're not willing to buy that, but you're willing to buy someone who has telekinetic abilities and can disassemble anything, someone who can magnetize himself, and a blue chick who can turn into literally any human she wants.
Yeah. Because one has to do with a fictional story, the other has to do with an execution of a scene.
But that's still part of a fictional story. The explosion is part of a fictional story.
Yeah, it is a part of the fictional story, and I'm not dissing the explosion itself. I mean, Hugh Jackman walking away from anything exploding is always awesome, but
Especially in Les Mis when he did that.
who am I? I'm Jean Valjean. Boom.
That would have been interesting.
I'm sure that
He blew up Javert instead of him jumping off of the bridge.
that would have been quite the plot twist.
Yep.
Actually, no, I don't think that would have been a good plot twist. It would just be it would be more head scratching than the fact that Russell Crowe played Javert.
Hey, I think he did a good job.
I like it too, but it was, I don't know. I couldn't help but think that maybe there was a little bit more emphasis on his acting part than his singing part, and that's why he was chosen for the role. Vocally, it's just not as good as it could have been.
But it wasn't as bad as a lot of people say it was. I mean,
No.
I don't think he has a fantastic voice, especially when you compare him to Hugh Jackman, who sounded incredible. But it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was a pleasant voice to listen to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I didn't think he did bad per se, but it could have been better, I guess. I still like it. I mean, I still blast the Les Mis soundtrack, and as I drive down the streets of Amarillo, I roll down my window and blast, "Do you hear the people sing?" And everybody looks at me like, dude, shut up.
It's probably more tolerable than if you were blasting death metal.
That would just be funny. Although, okay, I was listening to, I want to say it was Haste the Day the other day, and I was stopped at the light on Western and 34th, and it was Living Sacrifice. It was Living Sacrifice that I was listening to, and I am doing the air guitar to the riff, and there's this kid on this skateboard who's standing like in the median of the road, like trying to cross the street, whatever, and he's looking at me and he's making the rock fist and he's like banging his head with me, and I'm just like, you are awesome, kid.
Nice.
Yeah, and I felt slightly embarrassed, but I was still just like, I like you, kid. I like you. You don't know what I'm listening to, but you're still banging along. I like that.
Awesome.
My name is Austin. I am the head honcho of Another Ascending Lark. I'm the one responsible for putting all this stuff happening, and I'm the one. Yeah, I'm the one, just not Jet Li.
And I'm Brett, your other beardly host, although my beardliness far outshines most men I know.
He's a Jesus.
Jesus wouldn't have had as long of hair as me or as long of a beard as me.
No, but societal, a general societal understanding of Jesus typically matches up with your face.
I blame Constantine.
I blame Mormonism.
Why Mormonism?
I don't know.
Constantine was the one who chose to show Jesus as a heavily bearded, long-haired guy so he could relate him more to his Roman people.
Constantine giving people beards before it was cool.
Yeah, well, Jesus probably did have a beard, just not big.
I don't know. I mean, that's just one thing that we will have to wait until heaven to see. If you want to contact us, you can email us at anotherascendinglark@gmail.com, or you can like our Facebook page at Another Ascending Lark, or you can follow us on Twitter at AALblog. If you got a question, you got a comment, you want to talk about something on the show, send us an email. If it's a good enough topic, we'll be more than happy to break it down, talk about it, dissect it, put it through all sorts of corrupt scientific experimentation for the sole purposes of conquering the world.
Of course.
Because, that's what we do here in this tiny 750 square foot apartment of ours.
You know what they say? One's a genius, the other's insane.
Wait, Okay, so which one of us is which in that?
I think I'm both.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Awesome.
I don't think there's a sharp enough contrast for us to differentiate either way. Um, okay, so we got. It's going to be an interesting show. We're definitely going to be talking up Lecrae and U2's new album. We're also going to talk about an article from my friend JW on listening to music and discernment. Got a couple of news things to talk about. But before we do that, Brett, we made some boo-boos in the last episode.
Yeah, we certainly did. On my part, I called Maroon 5's new album V, when in actuality it is indeed pronounced 5.
Yeah, and that I take partial blame for that. I should have looked that up beforehand because I said something. I said, is it V or is it 5? And you made the comment that you didn't know if it was their fifth release or not. I should have looked that up, and it is their fifth release, their fifth
Okay.
studio release. On my end, when I was talking about Thousand Foot Crutch's newest album, I said that their opening track was called Feed the Machine. That is actually not correct. Feed the Machine is a song by Red. The name of the Thousand Foot Crutch song is called Like a Machine. Lyrically, there's a little bit of a similarity, so I think that's kind of why I made the confusion between the two. It's not a clone of the song by any means, but just the whole machine name of it just threw me off. So, Thousand Foot Crutch, I doubt you're listening to this, but if you are, I'm sorry for confusing you with Red.
And Maroon 5, you're probably even less likely to listen to this than Thousand Foot Crutch. If you are, I'm sorry, I called your album V.
It's still a good album. If that makes you feel better that we totally butchered the name of it. It was a good album. Now, let's spend a little time just talking about random newsy thingies before we get into the albums and our main course for the show. Bob Marley is in the top 10. Let that statement sink in. Bob Marley is in the top 10 of Billboard.
Yeah, I mean, that's weird. I mean, he was around in the 1800s as one of the ghosts that visited Scrooge. I mean, in the first one, actually. I didn't even know he wrote any music.
What?
Yeah, you know, Bob Marley, he was wearing the chains and stuff in Charles
Oh
Dickens.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. All the seriousness in the room just vanished. It took 30 years, but Bob Marley and the Wailers' 1984 Greatest Hits album Legend has hit the top 10 on Billboard 200, and in doing so gives the reggae hit his highest charting album. It's a quote from the Billboard.com article. I have Legend, and I'm pretty sure every other person who has a slight interest in Bob Marley does it as well. What happened was that Google Play discounted the track from $9 to 99 cents, and it sparked 41,000 sales for a week, and that put it to where it is now. So the discount made the difference. I mean, that's a massive discount. You go for an album like Legend from $9 to 99 cents. The percentage on that, it was up 1,166% in sales.
Wow.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
I mean, it's awesome that he finally, you know, got back up to the top 100 sales.
I don't think he needed to be in the top 100 though to like change his status within like the music culture and within American and even worldwide society. I mean, this is just an extra notch in the belt, so to speak. But he didn't need this. Like, he already had secured a spot that even people who have multiple number one hits could never achieve.
But I mean, if you think about it, it does say something about today's music scene when an album from, what was it, 1984?
Yeah, 30 years old.
Yeah, it made top 10, but not a new, but I mean, it replaced what a new album could have been up there. I mean, I think that says a lot.
Well, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. No, it was originally released on May 1st, 1984, and it hit number 54. But now it has spiked to the top 10. Brett, you got something you want to talk about real quick?
Yes, death metal band Behemoth might be calling it quits soon. See, they've recently released their 10th album called The Satanist, and it's gotten a lot of very good reviews. It's considered possibly their best work yet. And Nurgle, their frontman, has said, "This album opened many doors for us, but has also closed many. You can expect anything from us. Things could go in any direction. There might not even be another record. Everything feels right." And he said, they might end it and they might call it quits. And he admits that at least he's hoping the band will release more music. He says, "You might see us rise again with an inspirational and strong record, but if it doesn't happen, I'm a happy man because I'm happy with The Satanist. I honestly love the record." And he's even said that he might make music that isn't metal,
Ooh.
which would definitely be interesting to
Yeah,
see.
I mean, I'm not a fan of Behemoth in that they're a band that I listen to, although, I mean, you can't deny the impact that they've had for their scene and for metal as a whole. They're one of the most important metal bands of all time. I think this is a good place for any band to be in. When you find yourself so satisfied with the release of your prior album that you don't feel pressured or stressed to release something else after that. I think it's a pretty good place for a band to be in. Uh, that's what Haste the Day did when they called it quits. They said, "Look, we have made the best music that we can make, and we don't think we should do another album, and so we're just going to end it here." And as sad and disappointing as it is, it's better to end it on a high note than have a career that flutters into oblivion. One terrible release at a time.
Yeah, and System of a Down pretty much did the same thing. Like, they released Mesmerized and Hypnotized in the same year. Both of them hit, number one in album sales, which only two artists had ever been able to do before, and I don't think anyone has ever done it after him. The first was the Beatles, the second was DMX. And so they had this really good dual album work, and they said, this is the best we have. We don't think we can do any better, so we're going to go on hiatus for a while. And I'm pretty sure they still are on hiatus.
Yeah. So whatever comes from this Behemoth thing, I know we both have friends that are huge Behemoth fans who would be pretty upset if the band decided to take a break. But even if they do, it's not because things aren't going well for them. It would be because things are going very well for them. One more news story before we get into album reviews. Deadmau5 versus Disney. I wonder why.
Yeah, it's really weird to see. And this article we have, it's kind of awesome. It shows Mickey Mouse and Deadmau5 fighting each other with lightsabers.
Yeah, Deadmau5 is, I think it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, looking by the way his robe is, and he's got a blue lightsaber. I want to say that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then Mickey has the Mickey head with the bow tie, the chest and robe of Darth Vader, and then his red Mickey Mouse pants. It's actually quite the image. I would not mind seeing more of that in some way, shape, or form.
It's quite hilarious.
It really is hilarious. Like, this picture is worth the article. I mean, the article's a good article, but the picture of it it's just funny.
Although Mickey Mouse better not actually become a Sith Lord in Star Wars Episode 7. I'm pretty sure I'd walk out of the theater if that happened.
I'm far more worried about other things being in Episode 7 than the possibility of Mickey Mouse making a cameo. Yeah, I'm far more worried about other things. But no, as you might imagine, for those of you who are Deadmau5 fans, his trademark image is the mouse head. It's what he wears when he does his shows. And Disney, surprise, surprise, also has a pretty similar thing, the mouse ears and the mouse head in general. So the two are presently locked in a trademark war, which, if I were honest, I don't think Deadmau5 is going to win, just because Disney has like a war chest of money.
Yeah.
Deadmau5, for all of the success that he has and all the crazy success that he has, can't even come close to Disney's war chest. The two had tried to cooperate with each other at one point. He was going to remix the Star Wars theme for the animated series Star Wars Rebels.
Which would have been really cool.
I would have loved to have heard that. I read that and I was like, dang it, that's not going to happen anymore? That would have been awesome. But apparently, in that process, Disney was looking into trademarking their name against Deadmau5, and had been doing so for several months prior to when they had started talking about about doing this remix. And he had done some stuff for the Kinect Star Wars game. They had licensed one of his songs for a mode that apparently featured a dancing Darth Vader. I don't know why Darth Vader would be dancing. Though the only time that I think of Star Wars characters dancing, did you ever play Rogue Squadron 3?
It's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah, like the opening for Rogue Squadron 3. It's got the disco remix of the Star Wars theme, and it's got all of the Star Wars characters like on the disco floor doing disco moves.
I mean, and Connect Star Wars in general, it was
That game sucked so
yeah, it
much.
was a massive failure. It
It
was
was a
marketed.
massive, awful
It
game.
was marketed as being, an action-y adventure game, but it's really like a game that
was-
had a bunch of mini games, and one of them was sort of a, just dance type of game, and the song that played was a remix of Raiden Solo called "I'm Han Solo," and in it, the player one would be dancing as Han Solo, and he would show up on the screen. Then Billy D. Williams voiced for Lando Calrissian saying, "Let me show you how it's done, Han," and then player two can come on, and it was still Han Solo and not some Lando song. But I also found out that Harrison Ford outright refused to do any lines for it because then he was still in his whole anti-do anything involving Star Wars mood.
I don't even have a response to what you just described to me.
Yes, it sounds horrific, doesn't
I
it?
don't have any words to describe what you just said. Anyway, going back to Deadmau5, he tried to make an olive branch offering and have his logo make sure that the name Deadmau5 was on it. Disney didn't like that. So on September 2nd, Disney filed a 171 filing with the Patent and Trademark Office. And Deadmau5 took his scorn to Twitter, as usual, simply with the phrase, "lawyer up Mickey." Them's fighting words there.
They're stupid fighting words, but they're fighting words.
Yeah, they're stupid fighting words, but they're fighting words. So yeah, I don't think that Deadmau5 is going to win this one. I think that if he doesn't handle this well, that this could really screw his career over. I would hope that there would be a way that they could coexist with each other, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen at the moment.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it was really slow news week this week. There really wasn't anything all that exciting and worth talking about. So how about we get into albums? Boy, do we have some stuff to talk about today.
We certainly do.
So for the next several episodes, really for the next several episodes for the remainder of the year, in light of the fact that we had a 9-month hiatus,
Thank you, Austin.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm going to be covering at least one, maybe two albums per episode for the remainder of the year of stuff that came out earlier in this year, just so that we can get our voices on the subject, and maybe, possibly, we could salvage an end of the year sort of thing in some way, shape, or form. But the album I'm going to talk about today is Demon Hunter's newest album, Extremist, which has several great things going for it, but in general was a bit of a disappointment. The irony is that the album is titled Extremist, and yet it's probably their softest overall album yet. There's still plenty of metal on there. Artificial Light, Cross to Bear, Gasoline. There are several songs that still carry your straightforward Demon Hunter vibe, but there's also quite a bit of songs that you could probably safely put in the hard rock category. Heart of the Graveyard, What I'm Not have a little bit of an electronic thing going for it. One Last Song. Several of these songs are very Demon Hunter light, which I don't have a problem with. Just in the fact that in certain places it's just a little underwhelming. I will say that as far as the mixing of this album goes and the production of this album, that this is a outstandingly produced album. I find myself listening to this album more so for the production than the music for it. Everything about this album is so well produced. It sounds great wherever you listen to it. I give this album props if for no other reason than its production. The soloing, the solos are excellently recorded. Not only are they excellently written, these are the best solos of any Demon Hunter album ever. They're very technical. They're very expressive. They're not quite as aggressive. Actually, they're nowhere near as aggressive as the solos on True Defiance. But they are definitely a little bit more expressive and innovative than they have been before. So the solos are definitely a strong point on this album, and the songwriting is hit and miss. Brett, you and I are both definitely early Dave Demon Hunter fans, except that you don't own the triptych.
I do not own the triptych.
You've listened to it, what, once?
Yeah, once. I really liked it.
Yeah, the triptych is kind of the pinnacle for old school Demon Hunter. And then Ryan's brother, Don, left the band in between Storm the Gates of Hell and The World is a Thorn. And you can definitely see a difference in the songwriting. It's not that the songwriting gets bad or anything, but the poetic expressiveness that's found in early Demon Hunter stuff is just not there anymore. And even on Extremist, Ryan still has not been able to produce the quality of lyrics that the band was able to achieve when it was him and his brother writing. It's not a bad album. Oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, it is a shame, but regardless, that's going to happen when someone leaves.
Yeah, I mean, Crowder, we're not going to review this album, but Crowder kind of had the same thing happen to him this year when he released Neon Steeple. And you can definitely tell just how much of the influence the band played with him in his songwriting. The same thing here with Demon Hunter's Extremist. Personally, if I had to choose between Extremist and True Defiance, I'm going to choose True Defiance in a heartbeat, just because True Defiance is, in my opinion, their best album to date.
Yeah, True Defiance was excellent.
Yeah, True Defiance, I believe, is their best album to date. But Extremist, if you can swallow the fact that it's not as aggressive as True Defiance, and if you can swallow the fact that Demon Hunter's taking a little bit more of a softer, sometimes more expressive path in this album, then I think you could listen to it and like it. If you are one of those who believes that Demon Hunter should have made this album even harder than True Defiance, you're going to be really disappointed. But I'm sure that since this album came out in March and it's now September, that you've probably already come to that conclusion. So no, if you haven't listened to it, if you were on the waves about it, just give it one listen. One listen's not going to kill you. But no, other than that, it was an alright release. Just a little bit underwhelming, I would say. Okay, so that's the album from earlier in the year out of the way. Now, let's talk about U2.
Who?
What?
I'm kidding.
Okay, I was about to say, whoa, hold on here. We got some problems here. No, okay, so Tuesday. I was listening to Lecrae's new album, Anomaly, which we're definitely going to talk about here after we finish talking about U2.
In a lot of detail.
And quite a bit of detail. I was listening to it, and I would think it was in my third listen through of it that afternoon. I was driving to my next customer's house, and pull up, and I take a little bit of a break. Get on my phone and look on, just scroll through Facebook real quick, and I see Relevant had posted on their Facebook page that you can download the new U2 album for free. And my first thought was, actually, there was no first thought because I was so dumbfounded by just that very simple sentence. And so I click the article and I start reading it. And U2 drops their new album out of the blue at the end of the Apple conference. I kid you not. I screamed like a little girl in my van.
I can believe it.
I was so unbelievably excited and was so unbelievably excited for the rest of the day. I couldn't for whatever reason I couldn't download the album to my phone. I had to go get it off of my Mac, so I couldn't listen to it during the rest of my workday. But I was so excited. I am definitely a huge U2 fan, as you can obviously tell at this moment. And the fact that they just kind of did this out of the blue is so exciting. I'll talk about the album real quick before we can talk about all the extra details about the album that comes with it. This is a very U2 sounding album. It doesn't sound anything like No Line on the Horizon, which I could never get into that album. I thought it was a little too weird for my taste. It was definitely U2, but I thought they were trying to stretch themselves up maybe a little too much. Right off the bat with The Miracle of Joey Ramone, it's got a very interesting fuzz rock and roll tone, and as they get going, I mean, it's very clear that this is back to U2 in original style. And it's not a concept album in the strictest of sense, but every single song is about a period of time in the band's life. The Miracle of Joey Ramone is about the time where the guys in U2 went to see a Ramones show, and that was like their watershed moment as for them making music. And then every other song has something to do about their personal lives in some way. Song for Someone is about Bono meeting his wife. Iris, Hold Me Close is about the death of Bono's mother. Raised by Wolves is about the car bomb attack in Dublin. many years ago. This is a very personal album, and you can definitely hear it that they're not just writing these songs out of a vacuum. Not that they've ever done that, but this is definitely a very personal release. It's very it's got a nice variety to it. Every Breaking Wave they've been playing live for a few years now, but they definitely changed it up a little bit and added not YouTube, the Edge's delay magic to it. Volcano's got a real deep bass line that drives it. It's got a nice variety to it. It's not no, it's not a, it's got a real nice variety to it. I know I keep repeating myself on that, but that's one of the things that makes this album so attractive is that it's personal. It's got a good variety to it. It sounds like U2. I mean, it's definitely got a U2 sound to it. It's not necessarily been received very well. I mean, it's got mixed to positive reviews depending on what source you go to. But sadly, I think this is an example of where the backstory behind this album coming out is overshadowing the album itself. If you like U2, guess what? If you're an iTunes user or if you have an iTunes account, you get the album for free. So download it and listen to it if you haven't already. Even if you're just a casual U2 fan, you know, you're a fan of their greatest hits, so to speak, I think you'll like this album. It's very approachable. It's very listenable. If you're especially into indie rock, you know, because I was doing FM 90 college radio earlier this year, I was definitely able to connect a little bit of an indie vibe to it. Not saying that U2 is going to be an indie band, but if you're an indie rock fan, you'll be able to listen to this and you'll be able to relate to it more so than just if you're a classic rock listener. But no, the drama, so to speak, that followed this album. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. First of all, $100 million for a 5-week exclusivity to iTunes.
That's a lot.
That's a crap ton of money. And that's what Apple paid or is reported to having paying. There's not a solid confirmation that it's $100 million, but that's what several sources have reported. $100 million for 5 weeks iTunes exclusivity.
That's pretty dang good.
That's quite the price tag. And the best part about that is the music industry didn't get a dime of that. That just goes straight to U2's wallet. Burn. And it's definitely sticking to the music industry in the number of downloads. There are some sources that have been reporting that up to 200,000 downloads on day one.
Well, that's really not that surprising. I mean, you announce something like that on as big of a conference as Apple, and it's as big of a band as U2, and above all, it's free.
Yeah, that's my thing, is like, oh my gosh, U2 is putting out their new album for free? Like even then, like the fact that has occurred several days ago, I still have not been able to wrap my mind around it, even though I have listened to the album multiple times since then. But no, 200,000 downloads for day one. That's 200,000 sales that didn't happen. So the music industry is not very happy, which I think is reflecting on some of the reviews of the album. There have been some reviews of the album that have been not very favorable, while there have been several reviews that have been saying, you know, this is an excellent release. Slate has a statement saying that it's extremely unsettling that consent and interest are no longer a requisite for owning an album, only corporate prerogative. I had some friends that were a little bothered by the fact that an album, that iTunes friends or iPhone friends, had a bit of a problem with the fact that an album just appeared on their phone. In principle, I can understand why that would be a problem, because your first thought is thinking, oh, hey, an album appeared on my phone that I didn't pay for. Someone's got a hold of my financial information.
Yeah.
So I can understand that at first. But this is Apple. The fact that Apple sent this album to every single iPhone, iPad, Mac, whatever, is they're only doing what they have created their software to do. I think it's somewhat hypocritical that users of, you know, Apple users, and myself included, cry foul that Apple sent them a free album when they're paying for and using a service all the other rest of the time and taking that for granted. But Apple can't do its own thing with its own service on its own end. Okay, so a free album showed up on your phone. Fine, if you don't like U2, just delete it.
And I mean, they're trying to give you a gift, you know? I mean,
yeah,
I can understand how they might freak out at first about the whole financial information thing. Perhaps Apple could have sent, you know, a message to all iPhone users, hey, this is why there's an album on your phone, instead of just having it appear. But still, once you figure out what exactly is going on, I don't see why you should be mad about it.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't like U2, the fact that that iTunes is giving you a free album from a world-class band and having it sent to your phone to remind you of why Apple is awesome is just, I don't understand why people are a little bit too upset about this. It seems as if the disturbing fact that this just appeared on their phone is kind of overriding the fact that this has been, that you can do this all this time. You've been able to download albums to your phone from the cloud. iTunes Match give you the ability to download albums to your phone if they're not already on your phone, if they've matched it with your iTunes library all this time. So it's like, people, like, I don't understand why you're so upset by this. If you don't like the fact that an album showed up on your phone, if you don't like U2, just delete it. Like, seriously, it'll take you 5 seconds, and this inconvenience will be out of your way. But the bigger picture, though, is that the album is going to come out physically. It will physically release on October 13th, and it's going to have several bonus tracks that come with it that aren't going to be available for digital download. And the catalog, YouTube's catalog, is going to be discounted, I think, by like $3 or $4, just as a way of kind of, not totally throwing brick and mortar retails under the bus for the fact that a major album just gypped them 200,000 sales.
So is it going to be free on iTunes indefinitely, or is it going to be?
It's going to be free on iTunes for the first 5 weeks.
Okay.
So if you don't have an iTunes account, I'm pretty sure that if you create an iTunes account, I think you can still get the album. Don't quote me to that. Don't hold me to that. But no, it's going to release on October 13th, and they are going to try to kind of offset, offer some things on the physical side, to make up for the fact that YouTube, basically gave the middle finger to the music industry. I mean, let's just be honest. They were making a statement when they did this.
Yeah.
A pretty big statement, which, I mean, it's U2, so U2 has always been about making statements in some way, shape, or form, but this is definitely a big one. It'll be curious to see, though, how the brick and mortar retails respond, because when Beyonce had her album drop out of the blue, no warning. One day you wake up and there it is in iTunes that Beyonce has a new album. Brick and mortar retailers got pissed. Target, in particular, refused to carry the physical release when the physical release, became available for sale. I don't understand that.
I mean, it's like, I can understand you might be mad, but you'd make money if you sell it.
Yeah, that's my thing, is like, okay, so you weren't informed that, Beyonce's new album was going to be an iTunes exclusive for the first several weeks. The response to that is not, well, we're not just going to carry her album at all. I mean, hello, you could still make money off of it. You're not going to make as much money, but newsflash, you're a business. This is what businesses do. They try to gyp each other.
Exactly.
So get over it. Sell the album, make a little bit of money on the side. Yes, you're not going to make as much, but making something is better than not carrying it and not making anything at all off of it.
Exactly.
The drama surrounding this has definitely been overshadowing the album, I think, which is sad because this is really a very, very good release. I think once it actually hits brick and mortar retailers, the drama will die down a little bit, but who knows? Good news is, and this makes me really happy, is that they have another album coming out soon. Songs of Existence is going to be, as Bono has said, coming very soon. Now, granted, they've said that before, and yeah, they don't necessarily have the best record of when it comes to following up their statements with, like, relatively short release dates. But the fact that this isn't the only album they have in the works and that they have another one coming up soon makes me really, really, really excited.
Yeah, and very soon when it comes to the media industry could mean 2 or 3 months.
I bet they will wait. This is just my thinking. I bet they'll wait at least 6 months. I bet they're going to wait at least 6 months. There is also the issue, and I forgot to put this in the notes, Brett. There is the issue also, because the physical release is going to come after the window of eligibility for the upcoming Grammys. Whether or not this digital drop is going to be an acceptable release to be included in the Grammys. I forget the date when the cutoff date for new albums is, but the October 13th release date will mean that it's not eligible to be considered for the upcoming Grammys. But since the album is available in digital form in some accessible fashion, I think they're trying to work out a deal to where this can still be, put up for consideration in the upcoming Grammys. Which, if it can be, it should, because this is a good album and it deserves some props.
Well, worst case scenario, couldn't it just show up in the next Grammys?
Yeah, but by that point, I think it'll be a little too late, and people will be like, "This album came out a long time ago. Why?" I mean, because if it didn't come out in the 2015 Grammys, it would show up in the 2016 Grammys, which, I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
that's a bit of a long time. It's too close to the line, I guess. But we'll just see. I hope it makes it into these Grammys because it'll definitely make things interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's Songs of Innocence. Now, okay, I need to take a beer drink, so you can take the reins real quick.
So recently, Lecrae released Anomaly, which comes very soon after Church Close 2, very reminiscent of Gravity after coming after Church Close 1. And a lot of people in the contemporary Christian market are very mad about this album.
Let's talk about the album before we dissect the drama because let's talk about the album real quick. What did you think of it?
I really liked it. I mean, I was very surprised to see that track 14, Broken, had Carrie Job in it. It worked, but I just did not expect Carrie Job to be on a Lecrae album.
Well, I mean, he did the song with Chris Tomlin on the deluxe edition of a Passion album. I remember this was back when I was youth minister at my dad's church. The way we did worship was we just played the songs on CDs and sang along with it because, small town Baptist church, that's all we can do. And I remember when that came out that I played that rendition of Our God, which had Lecrae tacked on at the end of it, where Lecrae walks out and does the bridge rap to Gotta Know. And at the time, it was like the coolest thing ever because it's like, oh my gosh, Lecrae is showing up on a Chris Tomlin song.
Yeah.
Looking back on it and listening to the track again, it's totally cheesy and it's totally like it doesn't work at all. It's bad. So he's done stuff with Chris Tomlin before, but you're right, Carrie Job. I didn't think that would work either, to be honest. I was kind of surprised by it, and it does work. She just handles the hook and the hook and the chorus and the bridge, and yeah, it sounds really really good.
And I can't remember which song it was that he talked about some pretty deep stuff, but he mentioned about how
Good bad ugly.
Yeah, Good Bad Ugly, where he talked about how he was sexually abused as a child, and he mentioned about how he took his girlfriend to an abortion clinic and a part of him died that day.
Yeah, it's a short song, but man, is it hard to listen to.
Like, I've never heard a song, with the exception of Korn's Daddy, that was that real and that dark.
Yeah, it was a very difficult release to listen to. I was listening to the Bad Christian podcast interview with Lecrae, which if you don't listen to the Bad Christian podcast, you should. It's a great podcast, and they had Lecrae on, and they were asking him, can you give us some lyrical spoilers, so to speak, about your upcoming album? And he said he mentioned Good, Bad, Ugly without mentioning the title of the song and saying that he talks about how he had he dropped his girlfriend off at an abortion clinic and had an abortion, and saying that he had to call his mom and discuss some things before the album drops just so that way she wouldn't hear it and be surprised. I mean, that is how vulnerable and exposed on this album he is, so much so that he has to call his mom and have a talk with her about some things that he's going to talk about on this album.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
That's pretty dang heavy. I mean, that is genuine authenticity and genuine realness, because in this album, this is the album that's trying to be the transition album from being just exclusively to the Christian market to straddling both ends. This would have been the album where for him it would have been best to play it safe, and he does the exact opposite.
Yeah, he doesn't play it safe at all.
No, he does the exact opposite lyrically.
And it apparently worked because he was number 2 debut overall and number 1 on hip hop.
Yeah, on the iTunes charts, and like we mentioned, he's got a chance to be number 1 on Billboard when the sales figures come in or get processed or whatever. There's definitely a nice overall sound of this record. It's very well produced. If you like well produced music, you need to listen to this album because it is so crisp. It is so clean. It sounds incredible. Even if you don't like the style of music, you can hear everything so well. I can't go. I could go on and on. Let's take a bit of a track by track real quick. We don't have to hit every track per se, but Welcome to America. Man.
Yeah.
That one hurt.
Yeah, basically it That song sort of trashed the American culture in pretty much every way conceivable.
It took an interesting take on that. Each like verse took on a different perspective. I can't remember what the perspective of the first verse was. The second verse was about a veteran, who went off to fight. I mean, I just presume it's World War II. Came back to America, and America basically forgot the fact that this person went and fought for your rights. And then the third one is probably the most heartbreaking of all, as of someone working in a sweatshop overseas making exports for American consumers. Yeah, it's. I mean, I think he does a great job balancing his appreciation for America while highlighting some faults with it.
Yeah.
It's a very painful song to listen to. Nothing.
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 We ain't talking about nothing.
No, we're not.
No, we're not talking about nothing. Are we talking about nothing?
I don't know. You confused me.
Nothing. Let's talk about nothing.
Okay.
Okay. What did you think of that?
I remember liking it. I can't really remember that much about the song itself. It's been a while since I've given it a listen.
Been a while. What do you mean?
I mean, it's been a few days of sort of, yeah,
What were your first impressions of it?
just that it was a good song.
Okay. Yeah, it's got a real nice catchy hook to it. It showed it was a single that he released beforehand, and it took to the top of the charts. That and Fear took the top of the charts. Which Fear, pretty smooth, pretty mellow. Also has that one Japanese line in it.
Yeah, that really surprised me.
Yeah, when I was first listening to it, I mean, I was driving to in between houses or whatever, and I was listening to it. This line towards the end of the song starts coming on in Japanese, and I'm just like, my ears perk up because I'm like, I recognize this language. Oh, it's Japanese.
Otaku's for the win.
No comment. I think the only really song that I want to mention on here is "All I Need Is You," because that song did get some coverage on MTV or MTV.com, I should say. Yeah, another song about him and his marriage, which, for the hip hop scene, kind of unheard of.
Very unheard of.
He did that once with, oh gosh, what was the name of the song at the end of Rehab?
I Love You.
Yes, I Love You. I was like, I want to say it's I Love You, but I'm not entirely sure. He does that again with All I Need Is You. If you're not a hip hop person, I doubt you're going to like this album just because it's definitely a straightforward hip hop album. If you are a Lecrae fan, I doubt you're going to dislike the album because it, in my opinion, is probably his best release yet.
Yeah.
Time will remain whether or not it's his most influential release.
And then I'd like to also mention number 10 that came right before All I Need Is You, called Runners.
Oh, that song was so funny.
It was like, it starts off with, two people talking in a gym about these girls that went to the treadmills, and one guy's like, heck yeah, I'm going to go, forget lifting, I'm going to go to the treadmills. This is a cardio day. And basically the entire song is a warning against chasing after women in that way. And at the end of the song, you hear the same guy who went to go run with the girls being kicked out of his home.
Yeah, that part of it I thought was pretty dang funny. Yeah, it's just wife, girlfriend, whatever, kicking out the guy because she saw the guy, visiting a certain part of town that he shouldn't have been visiting, and it's a serious moment, but it's still kind of funny. It's I don't know if he was trying to go for a straightforward seriousness sound with it. It's got a little bit of a comedy edge to it. But once again, Lecrae continues to tackle the issue of sexual sin and lust. And the fact that he's choosing to do so on the album that will probably, get him into the secular market a little bit easier. Again, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, this is great that he would choose to tackle such a self-conscious subject because, let's be honest, the secular rap scene, which is, the majority of the rap scene, whatever, doesn't necessarily... I'm going to go so far as to say that it does not necessarily help Christians, especially Christian men, when it comes to their sexual purity and sexual holiness. I might be a little off base by saying that because I don't listen to much hip-hop, but I think...
You're not that far off base.
Well, I don't know how to review this album only because, okay, I was thinking about this earlier in the week. When it comes to metal, you and I have a better vocabulary when it comes to metal because we're metalheads, and we listen to metal. We know metal, the history of metal, and we're able to talk the language and drop the names of bands and compare styles and compare sounds because that's our thing. Neither of us can do that when it comes to hip hop. At least not with the same level when it comes to metal.
Definitely not. I mean, I still like hip hop, I still like rap, but I don't listen to it near as much as metal.
Yeah, I mean, if I were honest, I listened to Lecrae's album and I listened to a couple of other these Christian hip hop artists, but truthfully, that's it. I will go on the record and say that I don't listen to secular hip hop artists, and that's something that I should probably remedy a little bit if I'm going to keep commenting on this, just because I want to be able to state, things that actually make sense when it comes to this. So that's why I have an acquaintance on Facebook who is in that position, who is quite informed when it comes to hip hop and rap, dissing this album, for various reasons. And as I was reading it, I was like, I can't dispute him because he's got. I mean, he listens to the artist. He knows the scene. He knows the history. He knows hip hop and rap the way we know metal, and I'm gonna take his word with a grain of salt that in the bigger picture of things, Lecrae's lyrics aren't all that well written aren't all as well written as we as in the Christian scene make them out to be. But all that to say is that this album is definitely a great album.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, as you're tying your hair back in a ponytail and you have to lean forward to get into the microphone. It's definitely caused quite a bit of drama as well, which it's Lecrae, so go figure. He's going to cause drama. But thankfully, it's good drama. Yeah, Brett, you and I, we saw on Facebook the other day someone call into question whether or not Lecrae was watering down the gospel on this album.
Which, I mean, that sort of thing also came into play when Church Close 1 came out. And I was surprised that it's even still coming up because this is 3 albums after Church Close 1, and people are still talking about this.
Yeah, there is a difference between watering something down versus not mentioning something at all, which I think is getting a little bit lost whenever these concerns are raised. Is Lecrae necessarily dropping the JPM, Jesus per minute rate, that he did in Real Talk, after the music stops, Rebel? No. And I think that's plainly obvious that he is not mentioning Jesus every other word anymore like he used to. Does that mean that he is watering down the gospel?
Not at all. I mean, he's approaching regular stuff a lot more from a Christian worldview. Like I mentioned the song Runners. In there, he doesn't mention Jesus. He doesn't mention salvation or anything like that. He just addressed the problem of sexual sin, which is something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, there is this. We try to pierce my words together. There is this mindset, and Christian music, air quotes, so to speak, has this real big problem where we have to abide by the Jesus per minute guidelines, that songs that have a higher JPM rate are better songs than others, and songs that don't have the higher JPM rate, that don't mention Jesus every word, we can legitimately call into question their salvation, whether or not they love Jesus, what their motives or intentions are. The list goes on and on.
And I even heard, when we're read, someone complaining about the song "All I Need Is You" being on a quote unquote Christian album, saying he's worshiping his wife.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be it. And I'm like, it's
a song about marriage. It's a song about marriage, people.
I mean, what is wrong with writing a love song about your wife? I mean, if you just think about it, if you're married, if you have a singing career, what is one of the biggest gestures of love you can do for your wife? Writing a love song about her and putting it on a major album.
Yeah, there is no Christian trademark on the phrase "all I need is you," in that the trademark owners solely allowed that phrase to be used for the context of worshiping God. My gosh, that phrase can be used to mean other things, people. Exactly. Come on.
And I've heard "All I Need Is You" in worship songs before, and it sounds like they're talking about a boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy when you hear it like that.
Yeah, the whole Jesus is my boyfriend thing. No, the fact that, going back to the whole watering down thing, if Lecrae was presenting the gospel and he was minimizing the sinfulness of humanity, if he was making light of Christ's atonement on the cross, if he was watering down the demands of the gospel to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Jesus, then it would be fair to say that he's watering down the gospel, because that's what watering down the gospel entails. Not presenting the gospel is not the same thing as watering it down.
Yeah, and one argument I've heard from people supporting Lecrae is that instead of writing music for the church, worship, praise songs, that sort of stuff, he's writing music from the church.
Yes.
He's writing music from the Christian worldview, and one goal he's trying to achieve is spreading the gospel to people. And a lot of people have said that he's just doing it for the money, but he has himself said that if he's doing it for the money, he would have stayed in the Christian market.
Yeah, didn't we talk about that on the last episode?
Possibly.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on the last episode a little bit about how, look, if he wanted the money, now this album is, now I should preface that statement by saying that this album is going to sell, and this album is already selling really well. But if he was so concerned about the money, all he had to do was stay in the Christian market, people. I know that bothers some people, but the truth is, if that's where he wanted the money, that's where he would have stayed. His slice of the pie would have been infinitely bigger if he had stayed in the Christian market than by jumping to the mainstream side.
And then on the other side, I read some arguments where people were saying, well, he might be trying to get in the secular market, he might be trying to reach people, but are people who aren't Christians really going to buy his stuff? And I'm like, well, he started off at number 2 on overall iTunes sale, number 1 on hip-hop sales. So yes, they are.
I think the better question to ask is something like that is, do you really think non-believers are going to buy albums that are solely catered to Christians and are solely released in Christian circles?
Yeah, going back to the first episode, a Satanist isn't going to walk into Lifeway, grab some casting crowns, listen to it, and become saved.
Yeah, I mean, if Christians want people to listen to their music, it's like every other mission ethic. You go to them. You don't sit here in your bubble and make them come to you.
Yeah, because it won't happen.
Because it doesn't happen. There's a reason why Jesus told his disciples to go make disciples of all nations, was because he was sending them out to go do these things. Not stand here and stay in Jerusalem until the nations just magically happen to come their way to you, because they're interested in hearing what you have to say, and they'll come to you. You don't have to go to them.
Yeah, with all the emphasis you see in the church on mission trips, on getting the gospel out there, we're really not doing that good of a job. Like, people will talk about some of the great Christian contemporary music of today, which I'll avoid using names right now.
Yes,
and say they're getting the gospel out there, people are listening to it, lives are being changed. I'm like, no, they're not.
They're not getting the gospel out to unbelievers. They're getting the gospel out to Christians, which, in their defense, Christians need to hear the gospel. The gospel is the means through which we experience the blessing and power of God. And it's not something that we just hear once and believe. It's something that we ought to remind ourselves of every day. We ought to be preaching the gospel to ourselves every day, because the power of God for salvation, not just present salvation, but the current benefits of understanding our salvation, is found in the gospel. So
Exactly.
There is that benefit to that, which, if that's what you want to do, great, more power to you. But don't try to pretend that this is going to be heard by unbelievers if you are releasing it on a Christian label, if you're marketing towards Christian audiences, if you're not going out and actually being among unbelievers. Unless you get lucky, that's just not going to happen. And Lecrae has the mission ethic, the consistent mission ethic, to go to the people that he wants to see profess Christ.
And I remember reading a transcript of a concert he was at. He stood up there in front of this huge audience of a lot of people who were drunk, possibly high, and he said, "Who here believes in standing up for what you believe in?" A lot of people screamed, yeah, there were even some F-yeahs to it. And he said, "That's what I'm doing. I'm up here standing up for what I believe in, and what I believe in is Christ." And he presents the gospel to this crowd of hip-hop fans who most, if any, who most of them haven't heard the gospel, haven't accepted the gospel, and most likely none of them have accepted the gospel and have been hearing the gospel consistently.
We are in the middle of a revival when it comes to missions. David Platt, Francis Chan, John Piper, Matt Chandler. There is a revival when it comes to the emphasis on missions. Praise God. This is awesome. We are not necessarily doing a good job of applying that missions ethic everywhere, as evidenced by the criticism of Lecrae. by the fact that he's going and being a part of the Christian market. We have yet to consistently transition and think through the mission ethic that we are now seeing when it comes to the music market. And I think the moment that we do, we will see more Christian bands. Excuse me, beer burp. We will see more bands. A serious moment just got ruined.
Bravo.
Oh wow, that just totally ruined that moment. We will see more bands go to the secular side and want to actually follow in Lecrae's footsteps. Lecrae in that podcast interview that I mentioned earlier, Lecrae said that he sees himself as a John the Baptist figure, like just by way of analogy. He sees himself as being John the Baptist because the Christian stigma with him is strong. The stigma is strong with this one.
Dang it, you stole my line.
Sorry, I sorry, I just couldn't resist. No, the stigma is still pretty heavy on him, and he at the moment is having to break down doors quite a bit. And he sees himself as someone preparing the way for someone to come after him, who, after Lecrae has broken down all the doors, will just be able to walk in and make good hip hop and live in a Christian life in the presence of unbelievers and share the gospel while making awesome music.
Exactly.
Which ought to be the ethic of Christian bands, but sadly we have this thing called the Christian market, where there's this bubble that if we leave the bubble, you have permission to call into question every single thing about that person's life.
And what's really sad, you look at the Renaissance, a very rich, very cultural, very artistic point in history. Where did a lot of that music and a lot of that art come from? The church. And a lot of famous composers we still listen to, Handel, Bach, they came from the church.
Yeah.
So people were having to go to the church
To
hear
art.
good music, to see good paintings, because the church was very artistically minded. Now we look at the Christian market, and if one person who believes in God suddenly decides to change his audience and do things in a way that can reach more people, he's grabbing money and he's watering down the gospel.
Yeah, it's ironic that the very market and its followers that often shout the trumpet call of reaching people for the gospel is these same people who will cry foul when someone actually goes to the market where people need to hear the gospel. I mean, it's a sad reality, but it's just the truth. Lecrae is doing an amazing thing, and Lecrae is a trendsetter for musicians to come. And it's the criticisms of Lecrae, these types of criticisms, as you know, calling into question why he's going over to the secular market, why he's not having a high JPM that some other bands have, and things like that. That is why I want to do this, because this is wrong. Like this is seriously wrong, and this has to stop. This is a man, a very public figure, a very strong public figure, who is going to the Gentiles to borrow the phrase, and the people that ought to be supporting him are the ones who are condemning him.
Exactly. I mean, whenever I started listening to this, when I started figuring out, hey, he's reaching more people, the secular market is starting to listen to him, heck yeah, more people are going to listen to a very godly man rapping about godly things. He's downplaying money, he's downplaying sex, he's downplaying all these things that modern music and culture glorifies.
I wouldn't say he's downplaying them, but he's not downplaying them, he's contradicting them.
Okay, yeah, the wording was bad, but I mean, he's contradicting all of this that mainstream culture has embraced as being the ultimate of idols. And people are listening to this, people are hearing this, people are getting this in their brain, and because he's not using a high JPM, suddenly he's watering the gospel down.
No, he's not mentioning the gospel as much, which I think one of the most freeing things that will happen for Christian bands is when they realize that it is a perfectly okay thing to write songs about everyday life. We are not called to present the gospel in every song. When it comes to art, we are called to make good music to the glory of God. Whether or not that mentions the gospel is irrelevant. Your songs don't get extra special consideration just because they have the gospel, versus writing a song that is expertly crafted, that is musically well done, lyrically well done, produced well, and is talking about an everyday life experience. That people disagree with both of us on that, and we hear about that all the time. But that is something we've just got to get over. We have just got to get over this notion that in order to be a Christian musician, you have to have the gospel in every single song. If you want to have the gospel in your song, awesome. Write the gospel in your music. Right? Do it. That's great. But if you are feeling compelled to write a song that is about your childhood experience growing up, concerns about the future, I'm just listing off random topics that are coming in my head. Do it. Do it and make a good song and glorify God in that offering. Don't feel like you have to have it link back to Jesus in some way, shape, or form and mention Jesus every, 2 or 3 times just so that people will think it's an acceptable Christian song.
I mean, and if you think about it honestly, if there was a quote-unquote secular band that was full of Christians and they didn't really sing about the gospel much at all, I mean, they started off appealing to the secular market, never appealed to the Christian market, I seriously doubt that very many people would be mad at them for doing that. It's only when someone who has appealed to Christian contemporary music market and then decides he wants to branch out more that they call watering down the gospel, that they call money grabbing.
I know. I know. It's the double standard. Well, I don't want to pull the double standard card just because that would be a little hard to pull off. But no, the point being that we totally did not mean for the episode to go this long in this direction.
But we definitely said stuff that needed to be said.
Stuff that I've been bursting at the brims to say for some time. And I think this provided the excellent opportunity to really point at a practical example of what I mean. Because I've been saying these things for the better part of 3 years now. And I'm not trying to throw a pity party here, but most people have written off what you and I have said. And I think that with Lecrae's album, this is an example that vindicates what we're saying.
I definitely do agree with that, but unfortunately, few people will see it that way. I think it'll be a long time. It'll take a lot of artists before the culture turns towards the way it needs to be.
I agree. If you're a critic of Lecrae, not that our show has been downloaded very many times. If you have a problem with Lecrae, look, you don't have to like him. Like, if you don't like Lecrae, more power to you. That's fine. If you have a problem with what he's doing as a Christian, pray for him. Make it a personal effort to pray for him. And if you're a fan of Lecrae, you obviously got to be praying for him anyway, just because you can't even begin to imagine the kind of waters that he is treading and how he needs protection and strength in the face of things that he's probably seeing.
For sure.
Pray for Lecrae. If you have a problem with what he's doing, don't just pray that God would strike him down with lightning, to borrow the phrase that I use concerning Gungor. Pray for his protection. And if you really think that what Lecrae is doing is wrong, talk to your Heavenly Father about it. Get on the same page with him. Don't try to, don't go before God expecting him to confirm your beliefs, but submit your beliefs about what Lecrae is doing to God and have him shape your thoughts on this matter. I think that's all we need to say, really, at this point, because we are at 1 hour and 5 minutes into this show.
Wow.
We totally did not plan for this to go as long as we thought. We actually had an article by my friend JW that we were going to talk about. JW, if you were listening to this, I am so sorry that we did not get to your article. I'll definitely save that for next week because it's a good article on discernment when it comes to music. Which does apply to what we're talking about here in Lecrae, but like I said, we're at 1 hour and 5 minutes, and while I'm totally have the energy to go on,
So do I. But our listeners might not.
yeah, I don't want to make
10
this.
of them.
Yeah, all 10 of them. I don't want to make this show. If we were to talk about this subject, it would probably take another 30 minutes to talk about.
Yeah, we can just file that away for next week.
Yeah, I say we'll just file that away from next week. JW Wartick of. Crap, I would forget the name of his website. Where is it? I can't find it. Oh, crap, I feel so bad. JW, if you're listening to this, I am so sorry.
Just look up Christian Discernment Regarding Music, a Reflection and Response by J.W. Wartick.
I will put this on AAL. I will put this in the podcast notes, and I will put this on another Ascending Lark once I've confirmed that this episode is at iTunes. So you can go and you can read it, and you can you can hear our thoughts on this matter. And if you have thoughts you want to share with us on this article that we'll talk about next week, email us. Like I said, send us an email at anotheriscendinglark@gmail.com. But wow, totally did not expect the episode to go this direction.
I kind of did, just because we knew coming in that we had a lot to talk about Anomaly.
Yeah, Anomaly was definitely the anomaly, and has proved so to be the anomaly. I see what I did there. Brett, let's start closing this show out. Brett, you got any recommendations you want to make?
Yes, well, today I've been on this podcast drinking a Sierra Nevada Flipside Red IPA.
It's so good.
Very delicious, and it is a limited seasonal, which means that next fall it will probably not be here.
Which makes me sad because it's so good.
So get it while you can. And I've recently been getting back into Civilization 5, and given the new Beyond Earth expansion that they're giving, or this is put out, get Civilization 5. It is a great game, and it will teach you a lot about history.
Truthfully, like, some of my favorite moments from the camp that we worked at were this past summer when me and you and Wes and John and the intern, whose name I will not mention, he knows who he is, would sit around after hours or on our days off having these massive Civ games.
And the thing is, we'd play for hours, because when you have, 4 or 5 people players and there's not that much, or there's nothing really going on with the computer, it takes a while. And we would play these games for an extremely long amount of time, knowing that we're not going to finish it, but it was still fun.
It was still a lot of fun. I'm a Civ 5 player. Hey, maybe if someone wants to hop on and play a Civ 5 game with us, we could have that as a fundraiser perk for whenever we need more equipment for the show.
That would be interesting.
That would be a fun fundraiser perk. I'll have to file that away. My reco this week, I know I didn't have one really last week. October is Pastor's Appreciation Month, so if you are a listener to the show, and if you are a Christian, and if you are in attendance in a local body of Christ, as you should be, it is not optional, begin thinking out a way that you can show your pastor appreciation. I already know how I'm going to show my pastor appreciation, and I'm not going to say it on the air because I don't want to ruin the surprise.
And I'll probably do something very similar to what you're doing.
Yeah, you'll probably do something like exactly the same thing as I'm doing.
Yes.
It's totally okay. Think about a way that you can show genuine, tangible appreciation to your pastor. Offer the chance to babysit the kids so that he and his wife can go on a date. Take on a responsibility that he could probably delegate to you so that you could give him a little bit extra time, to rest or to tend to the word or some other matters. Cut back your criticism for a month.
Yeah, that would be very nice.
That would be very nice. As the son of a pastor, my dad is a pastor of a small Baptist church in Claude, Texas. I didn't think that Pastor Appreciation Month was that big of a deal until my dad became a pastor and I saw what living life as a pastor was like. And it's you don't really quite, if you're not a pastor, if you haven't done anything like that, you don't really quite understand how the weight of it. So begin planning out, because it's the middle of September. You still got a couple of time, and that's why I thought it would be best to mention it now, so that way you can begin planning. Maybe setting some money aside to buy him a nice gift or something or whatever, to show your pastor that you appreciate and that you respect him, and that God has put him in that place. That's what I wanted to recommend this week.
Excellent.
Brett, thanks again for taking time out of your day to record this silly show with me.
No problem. I absolutely enjoy it. Thank you for starting this thing up.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the best show that we've done yet, and it is my personal goal to make each show better than the last. I want to add this caveat just because of just some things that I've been personally wrestling through this week. Neither Brett or I are really experts on this subject.
Not at all. Not even close.
We're not experts on this subject. We just have our opinions, and we're more passionately stubborn about our opinions than most. And we are willing to defend our opinions and try to convince you why our opinion is right. Neither of us profess to be experts when it comes to these things. I certainly don't. So we are doing this podcast because we are wanting to work through these issues, and we want to help people work through these topics as well, because we don't think that these topics are being worked through. We have no credibility elsewhere. We are just two college students who drink beer and occasionally smoke a pipe and talk about Jesus, who has saved our souls and who has given us a reason to do what we do. And that's what we want to do with this. We're not, basically, if we are acting like we're experts in something, let us know. We'll dispute it because that's what we'll do because we're sinners. But we're not experts in this at all. Like, not even close.
No, I mean, if we ever claim to be an expert in this, then please send us a message revealing our sin, and we will repent of it. Probably.
The only thing that I would probably challenge is that we are not experts. I'm not going to go there.
Well, I'm an expert on Star Wars, so
I will actually grant you on that you are an expert on Star Wars, and I will go to you if I have a genuine question on Star Wars.
Excellent, glad to hear it.
Because, like, you are, like, such a serious Star Wars nerd. It's not even funny. No, I want to thank Brett. I want to thank Rhapsody for being the best streaming service available to mankind and for offering up Lecrae's new album for us to listen to. I want to thank you, too, for dropping a free album for us to listen to this week. I personally want to thank, as well, my brother Travis, just for the work that he's doing right now and just for the inspiration that he is to me. And yeah, there's all sorts of other things I can think of. We've talked about the gospel already, but just to reiterate again, the gospel is the thing that we as believers care about the most, or we should care about the most. And it is the thing that we ought to be waking up to every morning and thinking about how the gospel has already shaped our day before the day has even begun. Where Jesus Christ, 2,000 years ago, took on himself on the cross the weight of the sins that we committed the day before, and because no wrath remains among those who have been forgiven and raised to life in Christ, that we can start the day off knowing that our Father loves us and that we are children in his sight and can approach him in confidence of that and live out in that in confidence. Yeah, this definitely was not an episode that I planned, but I think it was a good one.
Definitely, it was really good. I'm really glad we were able to vent on the whole Lecrae issue.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to next week's episode. Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. So I'm Austin.
And I'm Brett.
And we will see you next week, where we will talk about all sorts of other things and occasionally drop pop culture references, and hopefully you will understand our pop culture references.
But probably not.
But probably not. Y'all have a good week.